Now, as we mark the 70th anniversary of the first successful human organ transplant, we're discussing just how far we've come and what could be on the horizon. Renowned transplant surgeon and author of When Death Becomes Life, Dr. Joshua Mezrich, is in studio now with his expertise. Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's go back to Boston, 1954, that first successful transplant. Can you take us back?
Yeah, it was an earth-shattering moment. Peter Bent Brigham Hospital had been doing a lot of research on organ transplantation, but they really didn't have any immunosuppression and the outcomes were terrible. It just so happened that a pair of identical twins presented themselves. One of them had kidney failure, and it occurred to the primary doctor and the Boston physicians that maybe they could actually pull off a transplant. And in 1954, Dr. Joe Murray, a transplant surgeon, ended up performing this transplant, and the kidney worked right away.
And you think that primarily the success of that was in large part, due to the fact that they were identical twins?
Right. I mean, it definitely worked because they were identical twins. I think what they were able to prove is that they could take an organ from someone and put it into another person, and it would start working right away and work for a long time. And that was unknown. And I think they showed that there could be a scenario where an organ could be transplanted between humans and it could work. Mm-hmm. But still, they had a lot of hard work ahead of them to figure out how to do that for people that don't have identical twins.
And so to that point, when you compare what happened in 1954, the techniques used, the medicines used, the anesthesia used to today, how does it compare?
I think surgically in 1954, they had a lot of the techniques down for the operation. I don't want to minimize how much we've advanced in terms of the support we have, anesthesia, the health, how we deal with the patients. It's so much more advanced. But the operation itself was actually quite similar to what we do today. I think the biggest difference now is the immunosuppression that we have. And of course, the wonderful teams that we have to take care of these patients.
You've said in the past that transplant surgeons face a lot of tough calls. What are some of those, and how do you deal with them?
I think transplant surgery is incredibly beautiful, and I'm proud to be a part of it, but I think it's a hard road, and I think you're constantly making decisions about your patients, trying to figure out, is this the right organ for them? Are they a good candidate for transplant? Can I get them through this? Maybe the hardest part for, I think, everyone is dealing with complications. We have a lot of complications in transplant. Because we're suppressing the immune system, we're taking on really sick patients. And while the majority of patients don't have these major complications, we spend all our time thinking about those that do. In terms of how I deal with it, that's really hard. And I think everyone has to develop amazing coping mechanisms to deal with bad outcomes. Part of it for me is being really open and honest, forming a relationship with the patient, making sure they know I will be there. Part of it is having discussions with my partners, discussing what's been going on, being able to hear from them what's happened to them. And for me, part of it is writing. I often will write about these scenarios. I find it very cathartic. I'll tell the patients I want to write about them. They usually do want to have their stories told. I don't always do anything with those stories, but I think writing out the scenarios, writing out my emotions has been really unbelievably positive for me.
Interesting. Well, we've come a long way over the past 70 years. I would love to know your thoughts on where you think we're headed next. Xenotransplantation, is that the future of transplantation? What do you think?
I think there's an incredible buzz in the air surrounding transplant right now. I think we had this quantum improvement with cyclosporin in 1983. I think the field has evolved beautifully over that time period, but there's this general feeling that there's going to be a next quantum leap. I'm a xeno-optimist, so I kind of believe in xenotransplant, but I think events of the last 6 months have shown us it's not going to be easy. And even though our successes in the laboratory have been amazing, it's not going to be so easy to apply it to humans. But I think we're going to get there. I think our abilities are way beyond what anyone could believe. Gene editing is advancing rapidly. I think there's a real excitement. I think there are a lot of other advances that are going on. The organ pumping is just at its infancy, and it's going to lead to more and more and better organs. I think medications are going to improve. And I'm very optimistic. If I was a young person going into any field now, I can't imagine not choosing transplant.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We certainly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.